Iran is telling vessels that they are closing the Strait of Hormuz. Over 20% of global oil supply is potentially coming to a halt. In their 2025 analysis, JP Morgan described this as the worst case scenario in an Israel-Iran war. Icing on the cake for all of you. A U.S. combat support vessel, MST, was heavily struck by missiles from the IRGC Navy today. Obviously, U.S. media is not admitting that. They say no casualties, so on and so forth, right? Trump called Iran's bluff. He said, they're not going to do anything if I strike Iran with Israel. If we target their government and military leadership, everything will be fine, right? Well, he called their bluff. Iran responded by striking just about anything with a U.S. flag on it within the entire region. And now we have seen that Iran has shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, we are going to explain why this is so important. But the IRGC Navy has announced via VHF radio that no vessels are allowed to cross. So we haven't heard this directly from the Iranian official command. They didn't come out and put out a press statement or something. But as you're about to see, they don't really need to, okay? Because it is already in effect. Iran is telling vessels that they are closing the Strait of Hormuz. Over 20% of global oil supply is potentially coming to a halt. So as you can see, ships are receiving high-frequency broadcasts from the Revolutionary Guard saying that no one is allowed to cross. And as a result, you have hundreds of ships which are piling up inside the Strait of Hormuz. All right? So regardless of whatever some stupid person on Twitter says, and they say, actually, they didn't officially announce it. Actually, they didn't officially announce it. Well, take a look at this. You have hundreds of ships piling up and nowhere to go. They cannot move through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Revolutionary Guard have warned ships over VHF that no vessel is allowed to pass. The strait is a narrow choke point, just 21 to 33 kilometers wide at its tightest between Iran to the north of Oman and the UAE to the south. Roughly 20 to 30% of global seaborne crude oil, about 20 to 21 million barrels per day, moves through it. Major exporters, including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, and Qatar, depend on this single route to supply global markets. I want to put this in perspective for you. We'll be right back with the video, but first, a quick word from our sponsor, Atomic Minerals, trading under ATOM on the TSX Venture and ATMMF in the United States. In our last spotlight, we talked about how Atomic Minerals could be positioned to answer America's urgent need for domestic uranium. Today, that story is moving faster than anyone expected. The $2.7 billion Department of Energy Uranium Enrichment Initiative isn't just a headline, it's a game changer. This commitment signals that the U.S. government is serious about securing domestic uranium supply, and the market is responding. Uranium explorers with strategic assets and proven management are seeing increased interest as the reality sets in. America needs these companies. This isn't about speculation. It's about national security. The U.S. military relies on uranium for advanced defense systems, naval reactors, and strategic deterrence. With Russia controlling global enrichment capacity and the U.S. dependent on foreign suppliers for over 90% of its uranium, the vulnerability is real. The government's $2.7 billion commitment proves they understand the stakes. Atomic Minerals could have what the market is looking for. Atomic's leadership includes members who are part of the discovery and subsequent $654 million sale of the Rough Rider deposit to Rio Tinto, and with 4 strategically located uranium projects in the Colorado Plateau, the team isn't new to this. They know how to find uranium, how to de-risk projects, and how to create shareholder value. With exploration programs underway and government support for domestic uranium accelerating, Atomic is in execution mode. You have a government mandate backed by $2.7 billion, a proven management team with a $654 million track record, strategic uranium assets in America's proven uranium province. Atomic Minerals is executing on multiple fronts, and with the government supporting domestic uranium accelerating, this is a story you need to be following closely. Check out the link in the description to stay updated on this critical minerals opportunity, and a special thanks to Atomic Minerals, trading under ATOM on the TSX Venture and ATMMF in the US, for sponsoring today's video. Venezuela, like before the war and everything, was producing 1 million barrels of oil per day in total. On a good day, 1 million barrels per day. It was like 900,000, 850,000 to a million barrels per day. Through the Strait of Hormuz, 20 to 21 million barrels of oil flow through per day, roughly 20 to 30% of global seaborne crude oil. So as you can see, tanker traffic has frozen around the Strait of Hormuz, speeds dropping to zero across the maps as international monitoring systems show a full stop in movement. Reuters reports that several European governments have now instructed tankers flying their flags to avoid the strait entirely. Tracking data shows dozens of oil and gas tankers are currently halting, idling, or diverting away from the Strait of Hormuz to seek refuge in ports in Qatar and the UAE. Iran has not formally confirmed a complete official closure of the Strait of Hormuz, although the IRGC has issued warnings to maritime traffic. Now, it doesn't take Iran a lot to do this, right? All you need are some naval mines and some naval drones. You don't even need the naval drones. You need naval mines, and that's about it, right? Iran does not need a lot of oomph to actually carry this out. It's actually extremely simple for them to do so. It's actually probably the easiest thing for them to do with the highest impact, right? Easiest thing, highest impact. Shutting down the Strait of Hormuz is a nuclear option, and in effect, they have already done it, okay? Oddly enough, Turkish ship named Bogashi and the Strait of Hormuz changed its AIS signal to Muslims VSL Turkish, apparently sending a message to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard: "We are Turkish Muslim ship, do not shoot." Sounds like they didn't shoot, but I don't know if they're going to get back out of there. So here is a good breakdown from the Kobisi letter. So Strait of Hormuz officially closed. 20 million plus barrels of oil per day will be impacted. The Strait of Hormuz between Oman and Iran, as we know, in other words, 1/5 of global oil consumption flows through here each and every day. After U.S. strikes on Iran last night, ships in the Strait of Hormuz are now receiving warnings. The U.S. has recommended that their ships avoid the Strait of Hormuz. In their 2025 analysis, JP Morgan described this as the worst case scenario in an Israel-Iran war because, of course, for JP Morgan, the worst thing that could happen is global oil prices shoot up to record levels, over $120 a barrel. And as a result of that, all the prices that you pay for basic items and goods will increase as well. This is going to have global economic shocks that we can't even begin to imagine, okay? In fact, according to JP Morgan estimates, a closure of the Strait of Hormuz could send oil prices up to $120 to $130 a barrel. This would imply a spike in U.S. CPI inflation to roughly 5%. The last time we saw inflation at 5% was in March 2023 when the Fed was aggressively hiking rates. Why is this the case? Because energy prices tie directly into CPI inflation. According to a Fed study, every $10 rally in oil prices has the ability to increase inflation by 20 BPS. Oil prices are already up $15 from their recent lows, potentially adding 30 BPS to CPI. Below is a breakdown of the origin and destination of oil exports through the Strait of Hormuz. In 2024, exports of crude and condensate from Saudi Arabia accounted for 38% of total Hormuz crude flows. Even the US and EU receive oil from this passage. The next question is, why not take a different route? Well, Hormuz is the only sea outlet for oil-producing countries like Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, much of Saudi Arabia's production. This means these countries have no... Yeah, look at a fucking map. No, why did they even include that? Estimates show that 6.5 to 7.5 million barrels per day of production could be rerouted through pipelines, but this is still a 65% drop in production, or 13% of global supply. The world is heavily reliant on seaborne crude oil transports, and Iran knows this. And oil markets have already been partially pricing this in. The cost of shipping 2 million barrels of crude from the Middle East to China is up to 200,000 barrels per day, the highest since the 2020 pandemic. This marks a 584% increase in the first week of January. It's worth noting that the Strait of Hormuz has never fully closed in modern history. However, as radar data shows, oil and gas tankers are avoiding the passage now. The U.S. has also warned vessels to stay 30 nautical miles away. Also, icing on the cake for all of you, a U.S. combat support vessel, MST, was heavily struck by missiles from the IRGC Navy today. Obviously, U.S. media is not admitting that. They say no casualties, so on and so forth, right? Nothing new. Nothing new under the sun. Only thing that is new under the sun is, oh my gosh, Strait of Hormuz closed. Get fucked, Wall Street. Actually, you know who's going to get fucked? Average people. Get ready to pay a gajillion dollars for all your basic goods because oil is needed for literally everything. And you're going to, okay, maybe someone who like worships the ground that Netanyahu walks on and actually believes all the propaganda, watches Ben Shapiro, they're going to be very happy to incur extra fees for Israel's behalf. But no, people are going to get fucked by this, and all for what? For Netanyahu. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.